So tonight, here at Salesforce Tower, we're launching the world's first digital impact card. This is a card for every meeting. We'll load it with cash and give it to the executives after that meeting so they can share it with the charity. What you're going to see tonight is a whole lot of business leaders talking about giving back.
Successful businesses are required to focus on profit margins and market share, yet, I'm really delighted tonight that we are focusing on the opportunity to do really well in society.
Hope is a powerful thing. In some ways, it's kind of like magic, but it doesn't always work out as we plan. See, the only real way to measure hope is by measuring the one thing that turns hope into reality, and that is with time.
We're working on areas of new, better and more philanthropy, which fits absolutely with the strategy of what Meet Magic have, is new innovative ways to get people to bring their wealth into society.
But really it's about people, and it's about connections with people, and it's about creative people doing creative things and incredible ideas being brought to life.
We have an incredible brand called Shit Happens. We have it to a life. We also have an incredible coffee company called The Grain Coffee, because our idea is that if we make everyday products that everyone can substitute, then you can support a disability-owned business and we can actually start to solve our own problems.
But the problem I wanted to solve was there were a lack of systems and tools. There was great technology to help with CRMs and employee engagement, but what about connecting staff to bring their whole self to work? Not everyone can work for a charity, but everyone can make a difference. And we're really proud to launch this impact card concept and be the technology underpinning this with Carl.
You have such an amazing cross-section of supporters, people on both sides of the Meet Magic platform who want to do good through the way they can. So really pleased to be here, and good on you, Carl. Meet Magic 2.0.
In years to come with this card, the impact card, what an impact it could have, and it's great to be part of it today. Thank you.
The feeling of belonging to our community, of people who want to give back, is in itself its own reward.
And there you go. The feeling of belonging to this community is in itself its own reward. And that is exactly what we hear by all of the execs who come on to the Meet Magic platform. My name's Carl. If you haven't seen or heard of me taking the piss out of everybody over the years, I'm the founder of Meet Magic, which is a platform, it's a B2B platform basically, where we give executives an opportunity to give back just by doing what they do every single day at work, which is, the humble business meeting. So we're trying to reframe what that feels like, because nobody likes too many business meetings, but ours really do feel good. So today's podcast, we've got a decision maker in the US. So not a vendor, is an executive who works in the education space. And this podcast really aims to showcase their journey. It's about them as a leader and as a change maker. And it's my way to help them share their story, because, everyone's got a story to share. It's not necessarily all about their work, but it could be about what got them there and how they give back now. So Drew Vernon is one of the directors of education based in the US for a company called the Tonies. When I first met Drew, I was quite intrigued by it, because when you see what you're about to see, you'll realize that they're onto something, and they're onto something pretty big. And I think it's really, really critically important that everyone listens, because screen time is becoming a pain for everybody. But let me, without further ado, introduce Drew. Good morning, Drew. Drew, it's 7 o'clock in the morning here. I've just finished watching England play football, and they're terrible. I don't know what is going on.
I don't know what to say about that. It's about 3 o'clock here in the afternoon, so nothing early for me.
Whereabouts are you?
I live just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah.
Right. Oh, that's right. I think I remember we were talking about this before, but you got the Mormons knocking on your doors over there.
That's right. You got to be careful.
No, but they're the best salespeople. They don't take no for an answer. I think we should hire Mormons.
Great at selling, great at persuasion. If not persistent.
Yeah, totally. So look, thanks for giving us some time. We met a couple of weeks back and I've been postponing it because it's just travel and God knows what going on. But just tell us a little bit about Drew Vernon and the company that you're working with, because we're going to get into what you've created and what you guys are launching around the world. But tell us a little bit about Drew.
Yeah, the quick story is that I graduated college right at the time of the housing crisis. I wanted to get into marketing, didn't quite work out. I started as a stockbroker and learned pretty quick I didn't want to do that for very long. So I went back to school, got a marketing degree, and kind of started out with Procter and Gamble. So I was attracted to them for pioneering brand management and brand marketing. I went and sold lotion and shampoo for a few years and learned the ins and outs of marketing, but wanted to do something a little bit more personally fulfilling and something a little bit more fun and curious for me. And that's kind of what brought me to the toy space. So I spent a little time at Lego, managed their preschool department for a few years before coming to Tonies, which is where I am now.
Well, I can tell you, Lego in Australia has gone nuts. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's on it's a television show. I mean, they got the Lego Wars or whatever it's called.
Yeah. I think here in the States we have something like that as well. A lot of fans of Lego.
Yeah, in the main town. So Sydney's kind of small, right? It's not like a massive, not like New York where you got streets and streets and streets. There's like one main street and that's it. And Sydney's, I think, on Pitt Street, which is the main shopping thoroughfare. There's a Lego store in there, and often when you go down there, they've got the bollards, like you queue up for an airline to get in. That's what they've got outside the store just to get into the shop. It's kind of crazy. What is it about Lego, do you think?
I think they have a fantastic brand. Obviously, they have a lot of history, but just sticking to the mission, trying to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow, I think has long been appealing, not to mention the last 4 years post-COVID, where the world has turned to screens.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's the other side of it, isn't it? People spend a lot of time at home doing stuff that they wouldn't necessarily normally do and got bored, so they bought Lego. I guess that's probably a good thing. So let's go back to where you are today. So, I mean, what inspired you to get into education? Because the company that's Tonies now, it's really an education company, right?
Well, I've started the education arm of the company. It wasn't initially determined to be that way, but I mentioned a little bit about my background in marketing. I came to Lego as a marketer, and I started to see success kind of in the education space. So I created a program called Prescription for Play, in which I partnered with pediatricians here in the United States. And what they would do basically when a parent would come in with their child for a checkup at 18 months or 24 months, the pediatrician would give them a prescription card, and tell them to play with their kids for 15 minutes a day. And that was really my first introduction, is kind of bridging this gap between, being a toy marketer and really, being an advocate for childhood and advocate for child development.
It's kind of interesting. Some of the charities that we've been dealing with, one of them specifically in the UK, which is a charity called Starlight Children's Foundation in the UK. Their mandate is to go into hospitals with these boxes, and they're basically play boxes, and play helps the kids to recover, and of course takes their mind off the illness that they're going through at that time in hospital. And I think there's a lot to be said about play therapy and the benefits. I mean, you're obviously seeing all that with what you're doing.
Yeah, working in a lot of different settings. Care settings is big for us. That's where kind of the comfort and companionship comes in. And then, in more traditional learning settings like schools and libraries, where it's a little bit more curriculum based and focused on the academic learning and development. But it's also the social skills. It's the social skills, the gross and fine motor skills. So it's really a lot that the child is experiencing those first years of development.
Yeah, but it's also when they're sick as well. You get all those needles and all those drips and everything putting in them, and then all of a sudden they're in the hospital ward, and something like this comes along, just completely takes their mind away from it. Which is, if you got one memory of being in hospital, you'd rather it be that rather than the needles and the pain.
Yeah, I would say so. If there's a distraction or something to brighten your day, help get you through it, I'd say that's a win.
So come on, let's have a look at it, because go and grab it, because this is, for me, this was like this is a bit of a no-brainer. So for everyone that's watching here, I mean, and I know people are going to watch it on replay as well. I've got a child. She's a child. She's a young woman now. She's 21. Then I'll tell you a story of, of what happened during all this online stuff when she was growing up. She got involved in all this madness around milk and the almond milk phase and the fad that went on, and it made her sick. She got really, really sick for a long time because she was following these Instagram people. And it was really hard to recover, and that was because of spending too much time on screen, being influenced by these people. And I think just have a conversation with me a minute, Vernon, about the benefits of no screen, because you obviously think some research into this, right? I mean, what the impacts of what too much screen time is having. What have you learned through too much screen time, reducing it?
Yeah. I'm coming kind of from the marketing side and the educational side. So a lot of my learning has been either firsthand or qualitative, which is, talking to thousands of parents and educators over the last 4 years. And then I've also done some research on the data as well. But qualitatively, you can see a correlation between the behavior of children and the amount of time that they're spending on screens. So I see it with my own kids. The longer they are on screens, the harder it is to pull them off. A lot of irritability, anxiousness, not to get into the social perils of too much screen time and social media. But we are starting to see the research on just how much screens are starting to affect our societies. And I just read a study that was actually done pre-COVID that found that 65% of kids 2 to 5 were exceeding the recommended screen time of an hour per day. You think of an hour per day, 4 years ago, that was, you'd have parents generally nodding along to that. And then the school shut down. We switched to remote learning. We gave our kids the screens. And then what you find is you can't take the screens back. And that's where I think things have gotten out of hand.
I think they get out of hand when you start to see these TikToks with 18-month-old babies asleep, and they're dreaming, and they're doing this in their dream, in their sleep. They're motioning the screen scroll in their sleep, and this is a big problem. And I read somewhere that there's going to be a pullback. Is it Generation Beta? Obviously, I'm an X. I don't know what you are. You look like a millennial, but I'm an X. We didn't have screens, then we got screens, so we're sort of balanced. We're probably the most balanced generation because we can have it or not. We don't really care. I think the millennials are less so, but the Gen Zs definitely became. My daughter's obviously a Gen Z. They definitely became addicted to these devices, and it's how they live, it's how they grow, it's how they were born basically with these devices. And then of course Generation Alpha's coming through, and they're even more so locked in. And I've read recently that Generation Beta are going to be the ones that really pull back and say, look, enough's enough. I'm sick of my parents and my grandparents. Could you imagine being a Generation Beta and your grandparents was an influencer on the internet? Like it's kind of going to be, well, they're going to be that generation that apparently that's going to pull back and say, enough's enough. It's time to just take me offline now. I don't want a profile. Do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always going to be a counter movement. 5 to 10 years ago, we were celebrating our kids being digitally native. I don't hear people talking about digital natives anymore. I'm a millennial, so I kind of went through the transition fairly early. It started with email and AOL and all that, and then it ramped up. But the handheld devices, I think that has really changed the game, and that's just been within the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. So, I mean, growing up, you obviously got mentors that were in marketing. I guess for you to go into marketing, who was your key mentor growing up from a marketing perspective?
I would say I had a few. I think I always looked to Seth Godin and his blog, longtime follower of his. And currently, Scott Galloway's of the world, things like that. But I like the common sense argument of just take a step back and hopefully try to see, observe yourself and the actions that you're doing either as a parent or as a consumer, and don't be afraid to like pause and reflect. I think that's kind of the moment that hopefully we are starting to do as a society with kids and screen time.
I think there's a problem with common sense, though, Drew. I think that it's not that common. That's
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Human behavior is kind of weird, you know. I see this all the time. I mean, I'm the guy. I posted something on LinkedIn earlier, and it was me with 2 round wheels and a whole lot of marketing and salespeople. Remember the meme that's got the guys with the wheelbarrow with square wheels, and then there's a guy with 2 wheels saying, here you go, and the meme says, no, we're too busy, and then they're running off with their square wheelbarrow. Meanwhile, I've got the 2 round wheels to make their life a bit easier. That's how I feel that we are. We're living in this world where everyone's just so too busy to even do anything, even though it's going to help make their life a lot better. So I'm really curious about how you're going to get this to adopt, because I think a fabulous idea. Show us the box again, because let's talk through this, because this is really interesting. So this is called?
This is called a Tony box. And for those who are not familiar with it, it's basically just a speaker system for kids. So it's just a speaker box. And it's got a little platform on the top, and it's got a little charging station on the bottom, but it's designed to work. It's kind of like a 21st century version of a CD player. It's actually inspired by a couple of dads met on the board of their kids' preschool and saw teachers as recently as 10 years ago. They were still using kind of your old school CD players, and you know, no screens, but they had their own problems. They scratch, they break, and kids couldn't really operate them independently, especially at the young ages. So the way that it works is we have these little figures, little characters that they've got a magnet inside, so they'll stick to the box, and they also have a little computer chip so that when you put it on the box, it's going to play a song or a story. So you can pause it by taking it off, and if you want to move to the next song or story, it's done through tactile play. So you just whack the side of the box. So you just tap the side of the box. There you go. All right. You can fast forward it by tilting, rewind it by tilting, and then you've got the volume up and the volume down. So it's literally designed so that, you know, a 3-year-old can operate it on their own with or without parental supervision.
And I can imagine that's going to have a whole lot of soft benefits to these kids learning to just find things like moving it with their hands rather than scrolling with a screen.
Yeah, so going back to kind of like the multiple, you know, areas of development, there's the listening component. So you're not staring at a screen. There's no visual stimulus. That's where the mind actually works with imagination. So if you listen to something and you create it in your own mind, that's a creative muscle that helps your imagination. And then the tactile nature and the, you know, the gross motor skills. There's a role play element to the figures. You can play with the figures. So it's really kind of a multi-sensorial device that can help with the entertainment and education of children.
You're so marketing. You speak so well about that. That is so clear. For me, it's a no-brainer that you've got something like this that inspires imagination, because growing up as a kid, we had the radio, and radio was theatre for the mind. There was TV wasn't that great back then. I think we had 3 channels. It was like shit. But the radio, whenever you put the radio on, you had to close your eyes and listen and pay attention. And I still do this today, Drew. I still go to bed sometimes listening to a podcast, for example, that's whatever. A podcast is almost like theatre for the mind as well, because you have to listen. And there's no screens. And so I think there's so much benefit, apart from it being quite therapeutic as well. I mean, I fall asleep a lot easier listening to some boring podcast. But it's so how are you getting those to market at the moment? Are they in the market in the US at the moment?
Yeah, so I was part of the team that helped bring it to market back during the pandemic in 2020. Originally came over from Germany, and they saw, you know, pretty early success over in Europe, and we launched this, you know, as a D2C business during the pandemic, and eventually, you know, grew through 2021 and 2022, started to scale up our retail distribution. So we're now nationally distributed at Target. We're heavily distributed at Walmart, big Amazon business, obviously, and then, you know, specialty independent retail as well.
And they're coming to Australia, New Zealand?
Yeah, actually, we're gearing up for a launch in about 2 months' time. Australia, New Zealand will be launching in August.
Yeah, right. Are we allowed to know where we can go and get them?
You are allowed. I'm not as close to that business. I'm not as familiar with your retail stores. I apologize for my ignorance there, but I'd start with the ANZ equivalent of Tonies.com, our D2C, and then I'm sure a Google search will show the wholesale opportunities as well. Or I'm sorry, not wholesale, but big box.
Yeah, look, honestly, I think if you're a parent, you've got an obligation to make sure that your child is not addicted to screens, and that you should be almost bullied into making sure that your children don't become addicted and give them something like this from an early age. And I think I remember reading a book once. I was talking to Rory Sutherland about this. It was a book called "What Are They Doing to Our Little Girls?" And this really freaked me out as a single parent of a daughter, because I realized that our girls are really hyper targeted by the advertising industry, like hyper targeted. But what really made me worried was the age of which they're targeted. So you imagine, I mean, we don't even think about these things because it's so subliminal, but you imagine a baby, a mother's just given birth, she has to feed her child. Some of the parents use bottles, and of course the babies wear a bib, and so the babies get fed in the milk, and then they dribble down their bib, and so they look at the bib, and the bib has a logo on it, and that logo is subliminally putting a brain image, and so by the time that child is 18 months, 2 years old, they're in the supermarkets. That image is related to the diapers and the nappies that are on the bottom shelf, which is why all the big brands have those diapers at the bottom of the shelf, not at the top, because the kids can't see them. The parents, the children in the pushchairs see those nappies, and then they point to it and say, "I want that one." And so all of a sudden, the parent thinks the child's actually smart because the child's recognize the logo that they've been looking at on their bib. And then it doesn't stop there. They know that by the time they've got to that point, these young girls, they're hyper targeted and hyper sexualized in the music, in everything, every area of food and clothing and everything else is all geared towards those tweens. And the tweens are the 8 to 13-year-olds. This is the catch. If you can catch those tweens, get them buying and getting them hooked on buying stuff and seeing stuff and going into the shops. And you see this all the time with, I'm not going to mention the brands, but you know who these big brands are, the makeup brands and the clothing brands and everything else. And you see them everywhere. These kids, by the time they're 13, they're highly addicted shoppers. And they are the ones that go on to spend money in the big shops, in the big brands and everything else. And of course, then the cycle continues when they have kids. That for me freaked me out, advertising. And I thought, wow. And once you start paying attention to this, you realize it is in the music, it's literally built into society like so bad. The overstimulation and the oversexualization of girls, not boys. Crazy.
Yeah, I'm nodding along to everything that you're saying. I'm a trained marketer. I'm well versed in this. Starting with P&G, they have a concept called point of market entry, which is a deliberate strategy to reach consumers at the first moment of need or awareness. It starts with you mentioned the bibs. That's new for me, but I know that from the diapers that a new baby is born. Comes into the world, and within 30 seconds, they have a Pampers diaper on their bottom. That's their first interaction with the brand.
Yeah, it's who knows where that's going to go. I think it's just up to us as parents to be a little bit more diligent and discerning into what we allow our children to put into their brains at such an early age. So when I saw what you're doing with the Tony box, it just made sense to me that everything does have a screen on it, but there's very few things out there that don't have a screen on it. I mean, obviously the board games, fine, that's kind of great. But there's something about not using your imagination that really, I think it stunts growth, and it doesn't necessarily develop the next generation of creative leaders. And I think that's something that we had as a generation because we had to create our own play. You know, we used to go outside and flick dog shit at each other because that was we didn't have any, there was nothing around. That was our play. It was like, get a stick and whatever. We had to go and find creative ways to enjoy ourselves, and that sort of sparked this whole generation of creative leaders. And I sometimes wonder where they're going to come from with the next generation, because that creativity sort of was lost.
Yeah. Sounds like you were bored once in a while, and that was not a bad thing.
Bro, no. But I mean, as soon as I got old enough, I got a spray can in my hand and started tagging everywhere there. So I was fine. I mean, that was the best. The hip hop generation, right? We would go out and we get some pens and we start tagging everywhere. Or, you know, I always had aspirations of becoming a proper bomber. Like, you know, you go out there and do a train or something, but I just wasn't that talented enough. But there was people in my close vicinity who were really, really talented at art, and they would go and do the trains and they would go and do the shops and everything else. And it was just this amazing culture growing up. So we ended up having to, you know, run away from the police because you had to be careful not to get caught. So there was an element of danger. And it was they call it criminal damage today, but that was how we got around. That's what we did. That's how we built our own status almost as a teenager growing up. You know, if you could bomb, if you could write, you know, your tag everywhere, you got a name for yourself. We didn't have the internet back then, so that was our internet. That was how we got known, and it was just one of those things. It was the emergence of the culture of hip hop, which my brother was actually still in it. He was one of the first few break dancers in the UK and became quite well known. And he's now the host of the biggest breakdancing event all around the world called Battle of the Year. And he's almost 60 and he's still doing it, which is incredible. Wow. And this, you know, he's interviewed everyone from Biz Markie and all these people all these old school hip hop artists. So that was our influence. That was how we grew up. They were my mentors. Run DMC and Eric B and Rakim and Public Enemy. They were my mentors growing up. That was the music I listened to that sort of gave me the creativity that I needed. So anyway, enough about me. This is more about you. So where do you see this sort of education? I think there's always an evolution happening, right? There's always one happening with AI and there's one happening with cyber and everything else. Where do you see your industry evolving over the next sort of 12 months? Is there something unique coming out?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of macro trends. Definitely seeing, you know, more attention given to the social media epidemic. Currently here in the States, Jonathan Haidt is on his media tour talking about his book, The Perils, you know, the Anxious Generation, The Perils of Social Media for Kids, you know, 9 to 15. Tony Box kind of comes in at the earlier ages, you know, ages 3 to 9, where we want to, you know, give our kids screen-free alternatives to entertainment, to education. So I came on to Tonies as the marketing lead, but kind of on the side, I started the education program. So at the time I was calling it Tonies for Teachers. Now it's grown into a full-time role for me, where I have the privilege of going out and talking to educators, you know, teachers, librarians, you know, children's museums, and really starting to get these integrated into some of these non-home settings, but also, you know, very passionate about the educational benefits in home as well. But that's what I plan on continuing to do is, you know, getting these into more environments and to continue to release new content. So I don't know if you can see, but we have a lot of figures. We've got over 1,000 worldwide. Here in the United States, we've got over 200. So it really becomes an audio library for kids that's on demand. And that's what I am devoting my time and resources to.
Do you think there's an adult version of this somewhere? I mean, you can imagine almost erotic stories or something. You know, you get a picture of Eros or a little statue of Eros and you stick it on top of the Tony box, and all of a sudden some erotic story pops out in the bedroom. Well, that would be great for the bedroom, right? Because you don't want too many screens in the bedroom, so we need to eliminate that. I think you've probably got an expansion market there.
Yeah, I mean, we would consider ourselves a children's company, so no plans in getting into erotica anytime soon. But that's actually a decent segue to talk about these guys, which are we call creative Tonies. they've all got the pointy ears, and whereas these ones are pre-recorded with content, these are actually blank. So you can record up to 90 minutes of your own audio content. So you can put an audiobook on here. That's probably where I would leave it, but this is up to your own creativity.
It's really quite a beautiful thing. What we see with parents today, leaving their laptop with the child to babysit the laptop, or leaving the iPad to babysit the child. This is a much better way. I didn't actually realize that shaking the box and turning it around actually did things. So that for me just makes the thing whole. I mean, it's a journey of discovery. Finding out what the different turns and tweaks do. So you can almost see that this becomes a much better babysitter than an iPad.
Yeah, I would say so. I think, again, it may not be the only device or the only toy that a child plays with, but definitely be a tool in the tool belt, as I like to say. There's a headphone jack on the front, so you can plug in some headphones. It's great for road trips, take it on an airplane. It could just really be a companion for a child for anytime listening.
Yeah, I think there's some great things coming in there. I'd love to keep an eye out for you in Australia and do anything we can to promote it. Because I know there's, even in the outback here, where there's a lack of internet, for example, because Australia is a big country, there's a lot of kids out there that won't have access to the internet, that won't have access to education, that won't have access to the normal things that everybody else has. So this becomes a great way for them to, learn, get educated, and there's so many different benefits that could come from that one little box.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of going into the lesser developed areas. I actually lead our philanthropy program as well. So I'm making donations to different organizations. I've done one in Western Kenya in Africa, where same kind of situation, no reliable internet. In that case, we would just download the figures onto the box before we ship it out. And then this can be a disconnectable device that can reach some of those lesser developed areas.
It's really kind of cool. I mean, you mentioned about I've just put up on the screen here about how you give back. I mean, that's a great way to give back, to go into those different countries. Have you seen much take up from them?
I saw the pictures and the videos. That's not my primary target. It was a little bit of a high touch effort, to be honest with you, because you're downloading hundreds of figures on the box, you're shipping them across the world. The primary basis of my philanthropy currently is kind of a couple ways. One is to take a look at public schools, including Title I schools, low-income areas, and to give access to our products to those who can otherwise not afford them. And the other way is to actually enlist our fan communities. So we have a very passionate cohort of ambassadors. So we'll actually send the Tony boxes to them, and they will actually make the donations to their local organizations of choice.
I kind of like that idea. I mean, I'm wondering if we should put some branding on a few of them and send them to some of our clients and customers. We've got a large executive community. There's a large charity community. Most of them are dealing with kids. Most of them have got some access to a large pools of kids, whether they're disadvantaged or not. I think we could become almost like a distribution channel for you to help you get those out there in Australia. We'd love to try and help some way. Even if it's just connecting you to the right people to get those conversations started, we'd be definitely be happy to help with that. So I see the value in not having a society growing up highly addicted to screens, and just doing one little thing to wean them away, even if it's just 10, 15 minutes a day to wean. I wish someone would wean me off a screen, for Christ's sake. I sometimes, that's why I go to the gym, and that's why I work out, because you're not on the screen when you've got something else in your hands and you can't scroll. So you've got weights in your hand, and that for me is my no screen time almost. But as a startup founder, and we've got a business in 5 countries, it's kind of hard not to be on the screen, because that's your business. It's how you get stuff done. But I have to wean myself off. And I always feel good when I've not had half an hour on a screen, for example, if I'm working out or gone for a walk or something. So you can almost see I feel the benefits of no screen time already.
Yeah.
And I think for the kids, they don't know any different. They wouldn't know the benefit if it hit them in the face, because it's like normal for them to have a screen. So I think the more you can do at an early age, the better, really, to help them live a better life when they grow older.
Yeah, I think these habits start young, and they go with you as you get older. But to your point, I think, I'm not here to say that screens are awful in every instance. I think there is a lot of good that comes from the, connecting. We're connected from across the world. I think it's where you have the habit or the addiction, the doom scrolling, as they say. That's the kind of screen time that we're trying to avoid.
It does have benefits, I'm my chief evangelist. You're in marketing. You might know Rory Sutherland. So Rory is the vice chairman of Ogilvy. He's arguably the number one advertising man on the planet. He'd have some very interesting things to say about this, because ultimately it comes down to human behavior. And I don't think human behavior is. I think Rory says something like the human mind does not run on logic any more than a horse runs on petrol. and he says, anything. He says not everything that makes sense works, and not everything that works makes sense. And I sort of get this, because we're talking about human behavior here, and often we use products of science and logic, but there's also a whole lot of irrational solutions to human problems just waiting to be discovered, if only we dare to abandon those standard issues, that naive logic in that research for answers. And it's almost like we've got to allow the world to be run by illogical people, not logical people, because logic gets you to the same place as everybody else. Whereas illogical, what you've done there is illogical. There's no screen. And that's why I think it will work, because it's illogical. And the best ideas don't emerge within disciplines. I think they emerge at the intersection between them. And so, I think why Google understood, if you're just a search engine, people assume you're a very good search engine. And I think somebody needs to realize that if you're not a screen, you have to be a very good not screen. And it seems like you've created something like that. But human behavior is really, I think, where this is going to come down to. Do you think that's going to be the thing?
Yeah, I think human behavior is a big part of it. I also think that with every kind of trend or every kind of technological change, there's kind of the counter movement. So, right now everybody's taking a look at AI and, what AI is going to do for the world. AI is probably going to bring even more screens. And I think with that comes the counter argument of let's start to think about, how to use screens more mindfully. And let's think about devices and tools, not just for our kids, but for ourselves, that are going to help limit that. But going back to, the marketer's point, is we're always talking about the path to purchase. Well, that starts with awareness. And so every marketer wants your awareness as a consumer. And there's thousands, if not millions, of brands that want your awareness. And we're programmed now. And it's so convenient to click to buy that I think that's really where it's gone, is we're being fed stimulus in the form of advertising and content from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed. And usually there's a click to buy involved. Advertisers want our money, and they're getting very good at asking for it.
Yeah. And I sometimes think that happiness is a really interesting thing that we're all seeking. We all want to be happy, but I think the circumstances of our lives actually matter less to happiness than the sense of control that we feel over our lives. And I can't help but thinking all the advertising, all the inbound stuff that we get in our brains affects our control of our lives. And we know we're being subliminally activated, even though whether we like it or not, we're getting these messages, and that's changing our behavior. So we don't feel like we're in control. And so I look at what you're doing there with, a simple box that's allowing people to actually control something and get the information that they want out of doing something. So you're actually taking a box, you're moving it in such a way, and to get a response out of that box, that's you in control of it. So I think what that leads to is a feeling of feeling in control, which is what that sense of happiness comes from. So there's a lot to be said about that as well. How you can increase happiness by being in control and not, because we're out of control when we're being subliminally sold to. We're totally out of control. Mm-hmm. So you've actually got something there that, I mean, from a marketing perspective, that's brilliant, because you want to be happy, get in control, and stop being out of control. And that really, I think, is a circumstance that's good. That's a beautiful thing. Why would you not want to be in control of your life?
I really like that. That's a new angle that I hadn't considered, but I agree with it wholeheartedly.
Well, I mean, if you ask people about their mobile phone or their broadband connection at home, things that our grandparents would have been a miracle to have. I mean, my grandparents have broadband at home, but it's like a miracle for them to have these things. But if you within a minute, you were listening to complaints about the monthly bill. And this is the perception, right? It's like, it cost me a fortune for this, garbage. And so I think there's something around that and the happiness piece that you've got something really powerful. It's a low cost entry, but there's a lot of goodness that can come out of it. Not just for the individual, but for the home. You're talking about empowering the home to be happier. That's kind of cool, because there's a lot of stress inside these homes at the moment, and that comes from all these outside influences. And so I think you're solving a big problem, and it's not just a problem of screens. It's a problem of happiness in the home. And you look at what you've seen, these videos in different countries where parents are trying to drag their kids away from the games that they're playing online, and they're fighting their parents because they're so addicted to the games and whatever. So I think there's a bigger, wider context there that you're solving, Drew. So I think I should take a hat off to you for that, because it's kind of cool. Happiness in the home.
I like that. Well, maybe we'll use that. That'll be our slogan.
Yeah, well, you can give that one for free.
I like it.
But Joe, I just want to say thank you for coming on and spending a few minutes with us. It's always interesting when we have people that they're in a leadership role, and they're doing something that's really unique and interesting to help make society better. And I think you're definitely one of those people. And I kind of like hanging around people like that, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make a little bit of a change, and we've got the same problems as everybody. It's how do you change the behavior of what's actually happening there, and it's been ingrained for so many years. We've got the problem with trying to change marketers and salespeople's behavior, because they're always doing what they've always done because it's safe. It's like they do that because that's what the herd are doing. Herd mentality. Can't get fired for buying IBM, so we'll just constantly do that. But if you do something different, that's a risk, and it might not work, and I might get fired. So there's almost this feeling of safety, and how safe am I when they're making their decisions. And I think you guys got the same thing. It's you're almost competing with the iPad and everything else out there, but I think that's a great competition. I think people know, they're all starting to realize that there's some harmful things coming from too much screen time. So I think your timing is great, and I'd love to keep an eye on where it's going, and I'd love to help you get it out into the market, whatever it is, whether it's connecting you or helping you get it out there in some unique ways. But thanks for joining us, and we'll catch up again, see how you're going.
That sounds great. It's been my pleasure to be here with you, Carl. I'm excited for the Australia-New Zealand launch, and I will take you up on some of those introductions, or just looking for ways that we might be able to work together.
You should, because right across the road here, literally 100 yards from me, is the CEO. His name is Paul Zara of the Australian Retail Association. So, if you want to get access to the market, it's right there. And Paul's actually one of the executives on the Meet Magic platform, so you can actually have a conversation with him on our platform. But there's a market. If you want to understand how to go to market and take it to the best place, that's one conversation you could have.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it. Thanks again for having me.
Keep up the great work with that, Drew, because the more I see it, the more I think about it, the more I get inspired by No Screen and that little box of tricks. It's kind of cool. Happiness in a box.
That's right. Happiness in a box.
Take care. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Carl.
Bye-bye.